Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in this world. God bless you. Today we are going to be continuing in the book of Second Kings in the New Jerusalem Holy Bible, and we are in chapter 19. The prophet Isaiah is consulted. On hearing this, King Hezekiah tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and went to the temple of Yahweh. He sent Eliakim, master of the palace, Shebna, the secretary, and the elders of the priest, wearing sackcloth, to the prophet Isaiah, son of Amoz. They said to him, "This is what Hezekiah says. Today is a day of suffering, of punishment, of disgrace. Children come to birth, and there is no strength to bring them forth. May Yahweh your God hear the words of the cupbearer in chief, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to insult the living God. And may Yahweh your God punish the words he has heard. Offer your prayer for the remnant still remaining." King Hezekiah's ministers went to Isaiah, and Isaiah said to them, "Say to your master, Yahweh says this: Do not be afraid of the words which you have heard, or the blasphemies which the king of Assyria's minions have uttered against me. Look, I am going to put a spirit in him, and on the strength of a rumor he will go back to his own country, and in that country I shall make him fall by the sword." The cupbearer returns to his master. The cupbearer turned about and rejoined the king of Assyria, who was then attacking Libnah. As the cupbearer had learnt that the king had already left Lachish, on hearing that Tirhakah, king of Cush, was on his way to attack him. Sennacherib's letter to Hezekiah. Sennacherib again sent messengers to Hezekiah, saying, "Tell Hezekiah, king of Judah, this: Do not let your God on whom you are relying deceive you with the promise, 'Jerusalem will not fall into the king of Assyria's clutches.' You have learned by now what the king of Assyria have done to all the other countries, devoting them to destruction. Are you likely to be saved? Did the gods of the nations whom my ancestors devastated save them? Gozan, Haran, Rezeph, and Edenites, who were in Tel Bashar. Where is the king of Hamath, the king of Arpad, the king of Lyre, the Sepharvaim of Hena, of Ivah?" Hezekiah took the letter from the messenger's hands and read it. He then went up to the temple of Yahweh and spread it out before Yahweh. Hezekiah said this prayer in the presence of Yahweh. "Yahweh Sabaoth, God of Israel, enthroned on the winged creatures, you alone are God of all the kingdoms of the world. You made heaven and earth. Give ear, Yahweh, and listen. Open your eyes, Yahweh, and see. Hear the words of Sennacherib, who has sent to insult the living God. It is true, Yahweh, that the kings of Assyria have destroyed the nations. They have thrown their gods on the fire, for these were not gods but human artifacts, wood and stone, and hence they have destroyed them. But now, Yahweh our God, save us from his clutches, I beg you, and let all the kingdoms of the world know that you alone are God, Yahweh." Isaiah intervenes. Isaiah, son of Amoz, then sent the following message to Hezekiah. "Yahweh God of Israel says this: I have heard the prayer which you have addressed to me about Sennacherib, king of Assyria. Here is the pronouncement which Yahweh has made about him. She despises you, she scorns you, the virgin daughter of Zion. She tosses her head at you, the daughter of Jerusalem. whom you have insulted, whom you have blasphemed, against whom you raised your voice and lifted your haughty eyes, against the Holy One of Israel. Through your envoys you have insulted the Lord, thinking, with my many chariots I have climbed the mountain tops, the utmost peaks in Lebanon. I have felled its mighty cedars, its finest cypresses, have reached its furthest recesses, its forest garden. Yes, I have dug and drunk of foreign waters under the soles of my feet. I have dried up all Egypt's rivers. Do you hear? Long ago I prepared this. From days of old I actually planned it. Now I carry it out. You were to lay walled cities in heaps of ruins. That was why their inhabitants, feeble of hand, were dismayed and discomfited, were weak as grass, were frail as plants, were like grass on housetop and meadow under the east wind. But whether you stand up or sit down, whether you go out or you come in, I know, because you have raved against me, and your arrogance has been reached by my ears. I shall put a hook through your nostrils and a muzzle on your lips, and make you return by the road by which you came. A sign for Hezekiah. And this will be a sign for you. This year will be eaten the self-sown grain, next year what sprouts in the fallow. But in the third year sow and reap, plant vineyards and eat their fruit. The surviving remnant of the house of Judah will bring forth new roots below and fruits above. For a remnant will issue from Jerusalem, and survivors from Mount Zion. Yahweh Sabaoth's jealous love will accomplish this. This, then, is what Yahweh says about the king of Assyria. He will not enter this city, will shoot no arrow at it, confront it with no shield, throw up no earthwork against it. By the road by which he came, by that he will return. He will not enter this city, declares Yahweh. I shall protect the city and save it for my sake and my servant David's sake. Sennacherib is punished. That same night the angel of Yahweh went out and struck down 185,000 men in the Assyrian camp. In the early morning, when it was time to get up, there they lay, so many corpses. Sennacherib struck camp and left. He returned home and stayed in Nineveh. One day, when he was worshiping in the temple of his god Nishrosh, his sons Adremmelech and Sharezer struck him down with the sword and escaped into the territory of Ararat. His son Esarhaddon succeeded him. The illness and cure of Hezekiah, chapter 20. About then Hezekiah fell ill and was at the point of death. The prophet Isaiah, son of Amos, came and said to him, Yahweh says this, put your affairs in order, for you are going to die, you will not live. Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and addressed this prayer to Yahweh. Ah, Yahweh, I remember, I beg you, that I have behaved faithfully and with sincerity of heart in your presence and done what you regard as right. And Hezekiah shed many tears. Isaiah had not left the middle court before the word of the Lord came to him. Go back and say to Hezekiah, prince of my people, Yahweh, the God of your ancestor David, says this, I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I shall cure you. In 3 days' time you will go up to the temple of Yahweh. I shall add 15 years to your life. I shall save you and this city from the king of Assyria's clutches, and defend this city for my sake and for my servant David's sake. Bring a fig poultice, Isaiah said. They brought one, and applied it to the ulcer, and the king recovered. Hezekiah said to Isaiah, "What is the sign to tell me that Yahweh will cure me, and that I shall be going up to the temple of Yahweh in 3 days' time?" "Here," Isaiah replied, "is the sign from Yahweh that he will do what he has said. Would you like the shadow to go forward 10 steps, or to go back 10 steps?" "It is easy for the shadow to lengthen 10 steps, Hezekiah said. "No, I would rather the shadow went back 10 steps. The prophet Isaiah then called on Yahweh, who made the shadow cast by the declining sun on the steps to Ahaz's roof room, go back 10 steps. The Babylonian Embassy. At that time, the king of Babylon, Merodach, Baladan, son of Baladan, sent letters and a gift to Hezekiah, for he had heard of his illness and his recovery. Hezekiah was delighted at this and showed the ambassador his entire treasury, the silver, gold, spices, precious oil, his armory too, and everything to be seen in his storehouses. There was nothing in his palace or in his whole domain that Hezekiah did not show them. The prophet Isaiah then came to King Hezekiah and asked him, What have these men said, and where have they come from?" Hezekiah answered, "They have come from a distant country, from Babylon." Isaiah said, "What have they seen in your palace?" "They have seen everything in my palace," Hezekiah answered. "There is nothing in my storehouses that I have not shown them." Then Isaiah said to Hezekiah, "Listen to the word of Yahweh. The days are coming when everything in your palace, everything that your ancestors have amassed until now, will be carried off to Babylon. Not a thing will be left. Yahweh says, sons sprung from you, sons fathered by you, will be abducted to be eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon." Hezekiah said to Isaiah, "This word of Yahweh that you announce is reassuring, for he is thinking, and why not, so long as there is peace and security during my lifetime." The end of the reign of Hezekiah. The rest of the history of Hezekiah, all his prowess, how he constructed the pool and the conduit to bring water into the city, is this not recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Then Hezekiah fell asleep with his ancestors. His son Manasseh succeeded him. Part B. 2 Wicked Kings. The reign of Manasseh in Judah, 687 to 642, the most wicked king that ever ruled in Israel. Manasseh was 12 years old when he came to the throne, and he reigned for 55 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hephzibah. He did what is displeasing to Yahweh, copying the disgusting practices of the nations whom Yahweh had dispossessed for the Israelites. He built the high places which his father Hezekiah had destroyed. He set up altars to Baal, and made a sacred pole as Ahab, king of Israel, had done. He worshipped the whole array of heaven and served it. He built altars in the temple of Yahweh, of which Yahweh had said, "Jerusalem is where I shall put my name." He built altars to the whole array of heaven in the 2 courts of the temple of Yahweh. He caused his son to pass through the fire of sacrifice. He also practiced soothsaying and divination, and set up mediums and spirit guides. He did very many more things displeasing to Yahweh. thus provoking his anger. He had an image of Asherah carved and placed it inside the temple of which Yahweh had said to David and his son Solomon, in this temple and in Jerusalem, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, I shall put my name forever, nor shall I ever again set Israel's footsteps wandering outside the country which I have gave to their ancestors, provided they are careful to observe all I have commanded them, as laid down in the whole law which my servant Moses prescribed for them. But they would not listen. And Manasseh misled them into doing worse things than the nations whom Yahweh had destroyed for the Israelites. Then Yahweh spoke through his servants the prophets as follows: Since Manasseh, king of Judah, had done these shameful deeds, doing more wicked deeds than anything which the Amorites did before him, and has led Judah into sin with his idols, Yahweh, God of Israel, says this: Look, I shall bring such disaster on Jerusalem and Judah as will make the ears of all who hear of it tingle. Over Jerusalem I shall stretch the same measuring line as over Samaria, the same plumb rule as for the house of Ahab. I shall scour Jerusalem as someone scours a dish, and having scoured it, turn it upside down. I shall cast away the remnant of my heritage, delivering them into the clutches of their enemies, and making them the prey and booty of all their enemies, because they have done what is displeasing to me, and have provoked my anger from the day their ancestors came out of Egypt until now. Manasseh shed innocent blood, too, in such great quantity that he flooded Jerusalem from one end to the other, besides the sins into which he led Judah by doing what is displeasing to Yahweh. The rest of the history of Manasseh, his entire career, the sins he committed, is this not recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Then Manasseh fell asleep with his ancestors and was buried in the garden of his palace, the garden of Uzzah. His son Amon succeeded him. And when we come back tomorrow, God willing, I'll read a prayer that Manasseh prayed before he died for forgiveness of all his sins. It's amazing. So be sure to come back tomorrow. And as always, I love you.